You know, welcome to Scorpio. This is the sign of the times. We're all glad the Scorpios come in. Such a sweet bang. Although it is true that every time is important, and now is the only reality, when this time of the year comes around, for those who are progressing on the spiritual path, or even thinking about it, this is a very, very important time to be aware of. Scorpio traditionally is the time that concerns the experience of power and tests and trials that relate to the relativity of power, the relative degree of power as it relates to individual consciousness and development, and such power as it may pertain to creativity. Scorpio energy is related to money, sex, and death, all which have to do with creativity. Of course, creativity is another word for destruction, which is a word for death. Death and creativity and life have to do with change. Therefore, this particular time implies a time of adjustment and changing things for the sake of clearing the way. Therefore, it is an important time for all who would identify with or associate themselves with the title or function of discipleship. Saturn, the planet of limitation and discipline, therefore has an important relationship to this particular time. And such tests and trials that affect every individual, not only all year round and every day of one's life, but particularly at this time of the year. These tests and trials for conscious individuals indicate quite clearly and often uncomfortably the process that not only accompanies unfoldment but precedes unfoldment. This is a process of elimination we're talking about. The process of getting rid of undesirable garbage, emotional baggage and garbage, the darker side of one's life, the darker side of oneself. And the plutonic power of the scorpionic process in terms of dying brings forth all those things, all those uglies, all the negative tendencies to shut down, to hide, to make secret that which is better, brought out, recognized, thrown away, released, transformed, or transcended. So this is a very important time of the year. It's truly a house cleaning time of the year, an inner house cleaning time of the year. Spring is one such time, and bear in mind that like spring, which is the Aryan time, which is ruled by Mars, Scorpio is also ruled by Mars. You clean the outside in spring, and at this time of the year you clean the inside. The Scorpio energy follows the Libran phase in the progressive evolution of the signs. And the Libran phase is that phase where the battlefield is set. equal enemies. The so-called dark side versus the light side. In Libra, the balancement is made. Everything is put in equal balance. You have the left side and the right side. You have the lower side and the higher side. And in Scorpio, the battle begins. The battle is waged. The struggle commences. And this time indicates that particular struggle, which is a struggle to become free. Free of material limitations. Free of negative emotional karmas. Free of lower desires. Or at least free of desires which are unconsciously controlling and running or ruining one's life. So Scorpio ultimately implies a time where there's a need to regenerate life. There's a need to improve the quality of consciousness. And therefore there's a need to transcend appearances. All of which relate to the penetrating power of the phase and quality of Scorpio. Looking in, throwing out, pulling out, dredging out, cleaning out, clearing out. Truly a time of clearing out. Excess. So this phase is a time to do battle with one's mediocrity, one's blaseness, one's materially comfortable state, and the tendencies in one's nature which depends upon mere comfort and slows down, becomes illusorily secure in the mere material state of things. It is a time to recognize what is common and vulgar and purge it. So that what the result is that which is fine and pure. The essence is what one looks for at this particular time of the year and during this particular phase of unfoldment. Therefore, it is a time which is also appropriately called a time of transformation, time of renewal, the time of resurrection, the time of rebirth. The time to throw out that which kills or destroys one's progress. And this particularly relates to desires of attachment and where the emotions are stuck, especially on the physical or the material plane. And this often takes on the obvious form of sexual relationships as well as physical comforts, and money games and strategies which simply empower selfishness. And such selfishness inevitably leads to fear, hatred, and negative ambitions which control and therefore run or ruin the life of anyone who is hoping to or expecting or even aspiring to go beyond such a negative realm. Of selfishness. which leads to and perpetuates pain and suffering. So therefore, Scorpio is that time and phase to really look closely at all unfinished business and take the opportunity to deal with, struggle with, fight with, and conquer impure qualities and any faults that one sees or which may arise in or as the self, what your personality tends to be manifesting or being controlled by. Or if it is not something that is limited to the self, then relative to other beings, how they control you, where you are being used by the power plays of other individuals who are not relating in terms of one's spiritual best interest. Those, in essence, who would lure you into a much more materialistically oriented prison and circumstance in life. Therefore, it is a time to see whatever it is very clearly that has to be worked on and transformed in and about oneself relative to the individual, a society, and one's situation as a potentially aspiring and sincere unfolding spirit soul. When the negative elements of self are purified, what is left is true opportunity to practice, because there is then liberated and clear or pure energy to work with or work from. And this purity is not the end of practice. It is the beginning of real spiritual practice, especially that practice which, in terms of Scorpio and the water signs, and the Piscean element of saving, which is the last in the water trinity, Pisces being the last sign and the last part of the transformational phase of consciousness and the creative cycle, then we're talking about this purification which inevitably leads to pure, selfless service in the spirit of saving other beings, which is one's ultimate purpose as a human agent or a channel of spirit. So the kind of conscious struggle that is implied at this or any time in the cycle should be welcomed, and is in fact a form of enjoyment for those who are conscious of the process, and for those whose intuitions are awake and alive enough to understand beyond a doubt that at the pure levels of consciousness there is true freedom, and not while one is incarnate and limited in the material or darker domains of consciousness. Or darker domains of non-consciousness. Where rather than unfoldment is happening, people are just folded this way and that way. Therefore, enjoy this period as being a very potentially productive time for each and every individual. Time to recognize one's place in the scheme of unfoldment as a part of the movement of consciousness transformation, a time for individuals to take real pleasure in spiritual community and in any brotherhood situation where there is a cooperation in self-regenerative practice. You know.